So I will give a quick, the West Haven Subcommittee met on January the 26th. We had 2 large items on the agenda at the time. Probably good news on both sides, but I won't steal the thunder from the city. One part of the good news is that their audit was completed, and so they will be able to do upfront, provide us with some detail on that. And the second thing is progress has been made on the partnership. Do you want to add some details to that with the update that you provided in the packet, Julian?
Sure. So when we met in late January, we received the update on the analysis of the state partnership as it relates to the Board of Ed, and Michael Milone was spearheading that analysis. And with respect to the last meeting, answering the specific question about what the forecasted cost of moving retirees would be relative to the cost of keeping retirees in the self-insured plan. And so through that analysis, we're able to settle on a plan going forward whereby the Board of Ed is going to move forward with transitioning the active employees and keeping the retirees in the Anthem plan. The move for the active employees is targeted for July 1st, and the Board of Ed will be taking the steps necessary to work with the state partnership and the communications plan and education for the unions and employees. And so that has come together. You have some of the highlights from the FY20 audit in the update, and then also the presentation from the auditor was included in the meeting materials, so you can see the highlights there, and then if you want to speak to some of those. And then we also got an update on the ADP project and the implementation of that system, which is scheduled to go live soon, this month. And then our next meeting is scheduled for the 23rd.
Thank you, Julian. I'm going to turn it over to the City of West Haven, the mayor, and her team to give us an update on the financials or anything else that they want to comment on regarding the subcommittee.
Yeah, good morning, all. This is Frank. So the financials you have, we are seeing very strong tax collections, which is encouraging to see. We are running slightly ahead of where we were last year as far as a percentage of where we're projecting year end to be. You'll see the revenue projection. We are projecting an increase in some of the revenues. We're starting to make up some of the building permits and some of the other activities. And we did, you'll notice that I did spike out the COVID relief funds that came into the city separate from all of the normal operating revenue, similar to how I project the restructuring funds as well. So on page 2 of the financials, you'll see that down at the bottom. Given that revenue that came in, it was of course unanticipated, unbudgeted, but very welcome, because we do see considerable overages in overtime in public works, in the police department, as with the police department, as officers are out on COVID leave for quarantines or whatever. Of course, you can't leave those spots unfilled, so officers are being hired overtime in order to fill those empty slots. So the overtime in the police department is trending much higher than normal. It is projected to be significantly high at the end of the year. If everything goes according to my expectation, it would be roughly $200,000 to $250,000 overage on the police department overtime line. So those COVID funds are being put to good use. That being said, we are projecting a small surplus at the end of the year, given the fact that I just don't know what any remaining COVID activity is going to hit us. We have begun the vaccination process here in the city. So there are sites that are set up. Nurses and medical staff have been hired in order to administer those vaccinations. So of course that cost will flow through the city. From the sewer and the fire department side, again, we're experiencing the same tax collection increase as we've seen on the city side. I'm not projecting any significant shortfalls in either one of the funds. There's a small surplus being projected on the sewer side. That is assuming that we spend all of the contingency amounts and capital needs for the sewer within the current year. As we get closer to the end of the year, we'll be able to refine that. I am showing a slight deficit on the Allentown side. I'm trying to get into why their overtime is so high. That is what's contributing to that. Based on where they are now and timing from prior years, that number is projected to be higher. Anecdotally, what I'm thinking is, since we did hire more individuals after the year started, that the timing on that overtime should start to diminish. So, as I get a better understanding of that, we should come back. I'm hoping that deficit will disappear. We'll get back to parity or a slight surplus there. Again, working on the algorithms for those projections. Of course, we go off of prior years, and everything that's happened in fiscal 20 and the beginning of fiscal 21 has thrown a monkey wrench into all of my modeling, because all the timing and the modeling aspects go out the window. So those are being refined as we go forward. But as of this point, no significant issues that I'm seeing within the city.
Thank you. Is Matt on from the Board of Ed? No.
I have not.
Do you have any update on the Board of Ed?
I
noticed that the expenditures are
Yeah.
trending higher than before, where the cities is not trending higher.
I've requested forecasts from them in the last 2 months and have not received responses in either period. So the Board of Ed page within the financials is still showing the budget amount as their forecast.
Okay. Can you reach out to them on my behalf, please?
I will.
Frank?
I will.
Thank you. One other question on the fuel and the telephone. I noticed that the fuel number is running on the higher side if you look at the comparison from the prior year, but you also mentioned last month that the telephone was lagging. Are you still in a lag with the telephone?
I think so. We're trying to work through to see which bills are still outstanding. The Public Works Department is working short-staffed. I think along with everybody else, right? They had people out on quarantine, etc., which kind of throws a wrench into everything. I've got a person out in finance. We're in the midst of the budget, and that individual was the point person on the budget. So, yeah. So I'm trying to pick up the slack there, along with help from some of the others in the department.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board members? One. Who is that?
Pat Egan.
Hi, Pat.
How are you?
Good. Go ahead.
Frank, could you just go back to what you were saying? You requested what from the Board of Education?
I requested a forecast of where they thought the year-end expenses were going to land.
So he has the numbers listed as a flat line as they are in the budget, rather than any true up or any backup if we were to have the detail of where their actual performance lies.
So page 7 of the financial report is the Board of Education detail, and you'll see the last columns on the right there are projected numbers. They have, since I haven't gotten any projections, they're still reflecting the budget.
So we don't get those at all by like some type of standing directive from the MARB?
Yes, we have, and we have asked for them, so I don't know what is going on, and usually we would get something, so for some reason we are not.
Yeah,
And when do we generally get those, what, monthly or quarterly?
I ask for it monthly from Matt, and typically he does respond and put the numbers in, but this period he didn't respond.
And when's the last time you got a projection if we're supposed to get a monthly?
I have not gotten a refined, a refined projection at any point during the year. The last numbers I got from them were the budget.
Okay, but Kim, you said we're supposed to get this monthly from them?
We are, and I know that I brought this up at the last month when we did not get that, so we will make sure that we follow up on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is now the 7th month, right?
6 months worth of activity.
Okay. All right.
Well, they have participated on the monthly subcommittees, I can say that, but we will make sure that this gets through to us.
Okay. And I'd like to know why it hasn't, I guess, is the biggest question. The other thing is, Frank, when you say, with some folks who are out due to COVID exposures, whatever, what's the procedure that the city uses for determining who should not be reporting to work? What type of time are they placed on as far as when they're out? Do we know, like someone says, hey, I've been exposed.
What's the policy?
How does that work? Let's say I'm a cop, I work in the finance department. How does it work?
Well, Attorney Lee Tiernan, I would like to think that we don't need law enforcement in our finance department because we're on the up and up. That being said, we follow CDC guidelines. We update ourselves on the CDC guidelines. We coordinate with our health director. So every decision is made individually. Our general policy is one of extended leave. It leaves up to 2 weeks for protective purposes rather than shortened leaves. However, if someone can get 2 negative tests, we generally allow them back to work. But otherwise, we have protocols. Now, it did get shortened. The executive order shortened the protocol. We were going on the 14-day quarantine. We're now on a 10. And again, we err on the side. So, for example, in one department recently, we had an individual whose child that they live with tested positive, and the other thing we analyze is symptomatic or asymptomatic. Tested positive and is symptomatic. So we told the other 2 people in that office, stay home until we get more data. We fogged the office. We have a fogging machine and a cleaning protocol that we do in those instances. And then we also coordinate on Frank's side, on the financing side, which he can confirm, that, and I'm sure MARB would want us to do this, we make sure that we access whatever COVID funds are applicable for any of that activity and expense.
Correct.
Okay, so these decisions, as far as what an exposure is made by the health director
No.
on each individual case?
The exposure analysis is first made by the individual who feels they were exposed, and then we collect data. If we need to communicate to somebody that they have been potentially exposed to someone. That is done by the health director because health information has a privacy cover that we want to go through the health director in terms of that process. And the health director actually has individuals who do COVID tracing. So they try to make sure that we gobble up and identify anybody who could be in the net of the exposure. And we do that in every instance. Sometimes it's very labor intensive, sometimes it's not so bad.
All right, let me clarify, maybe I'm not asking it correctly. What I'm saying is this, is that the determination, if someone, say, would fall under being exposed, right? So under the 10-day absence for an exposure. So I say, I'm a city employee, and I say, I think I was exposed to someone with COVID. Who fields that question and determines whether it qualifies as an exposure?
Well,
Is that determined by the health director, or is that being determined by department supervisors to say, okay, stay home for 10 days?
well, most employees are still going through the same protocol they would use if they were sick, or if they had a child they had to care for, or an elder they had to care for. So the employee would call their immediate supervisor, their immediate supervisor would communicate it to the personnel director, the personnel director supervises the health director, so this personnel director would then necessarily communicate that information to the health director. Because of the way COVID is, because of the way data collection is, the health director has access to private health information. So if your concern is that someone could fib about an exposure so they could get time home, we haven't run into that yet. None of our employees have any evidence, because we can confirm. It's pretty easy for the health director, not anybody else, just the health director, to confirm whether or not somebody is on the quote-unquote COVID list, and whether or not you have positive tests and so on and so forth. That being said, though, if someone has a reasonable fear, so if you have a symptomatic person who hasn't been tested yet, we wouldn't take the risk. Sorry?
Sal needs to go on mute.
Oh, that's all right.
Sorry. That's okay.
But in any event, I mean, this is a deadly disease, so if someone says they are symptomatic or was in contact with somebody symptomatic, they get tested. We make them get tested, but we don't wait for the test results. We start with the premise that they've been exposed, we need to protect everybody, and then we have them get tested, and we've provided testing for our employees at no cost.
Okay, yeah, all right. I guess it was a little confusing about the situation you talked about where someone's child tested positive, and then that particular employee would be classified as an exposure, but then two other people in the office were told to go home too?
Temporarily, then we'll have them tested. So in other words,
they're not an exposure.
No, but in other words, so if your battalion chief and you had a shift, and the battalion chief said, hey, my kid, I think I was exposed last night, I live with my kid, my kid is symptomatic, tested positive, and you two spent the day in one vehicle, then, we wouldn't want you going back to the firehouse and then, and potentially infecting everyone. We would say, Pat, stay home, please. Until we can get more results, and we would ask you to get tested.
All I'm saying is, that's not an exposure under the CDC guidelines.
It is not, but it's us trying to be proactive. And the other thing is, we've been pretty lucky, knock wood, we think, and, we don't want to have, dozens of people out because we were less restrictive. We were on the side of being more restrictive.
Okay. The other thing is, Frank, with the issue with Allentown with the overtime, you said this should be mitigating after the first of the year because you've hired some more folks, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it was due to, you were filling, obviously, filling vacancies using overtime, up until that point. So, is there a surplus then in payroll, in the payroll line? Because clearly those positions were vacant.
That's possible.
It is possible. The model that I have looks at, 3 years' worth of timing for, overtime. Obviously, some months are gonna be heavier overtime than others. So I don't just straight line it. I look at, in the past, what the back half of the year has done compared to the first half of the year. Obviously, if more overtime is being spent in the first half of the year, that's gonna play into the model as it goes through.
And in the model, both of those items are in the same grouping of payroll and personnel, correct?
That's correct. Well,
In the report that you provide to us?
in the report that I provide, but the model actually looks at each line separately.
Sure.
But in aggregate, obviously, the payroll line would be, for that one position, that would hold a surplus, because for the first half of the year, no one was in it, and that would offset a little bit of the overage in the overtime line item, right?
Yeah, that's why I say I need to dig into this.
Okay. All right.
So I have
That'll be next week.
I have a message out to the chief, the new chief, so I'm just waiting for a response.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the city?
This month,
Hi, Mark.
the IBNR costs associated with the board side of the equation, I believe, is over $1 million. Quite a while ago, MARB, I think it was Bob White, talked with the secretary about how MARB's role in mitigating those IBNR costs should they move into the partnership plan. I guess my question is, how are those IBNR costs to be paid? Is there a plan to pay those IBNR costs?
Yeah, there is a plan. Yeah, there is a plan. It was presented at the subcommittee, and we've worked through that with the Board of Ed. And that is to be paid, the savings that they receive in the first year. The superintendent has agreed to put that savings in the first year and to offset the IBNR costs of making the switch.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You bet. And I know that Matt joined us, so Matt, would you like to comment on the projections that and where the Board of Ed stands?
Sure. I apologize for being late. So right now, overall, the board feels we're in a very good spot. I know when you look at the projections, a little higher than it was compared to last year at this time. A lot of that is because we decided to have in-person learning starting at the beginning of the year. The majority of the items that we bought were bought up front, just to ensure that everything was ready to go. A couple of items are also a little elevated as of right now because our COVID relief funds within Munis were not set up.
That's City Hall.
The city has completed that. I don't have access to do that.
Yeah.
So we will be switching those expenses to those appropriate funds. And then the final thing I think I'll point out, instruction seems pretty elevated right now, but we had a pretty substantial technology project that we did through E-rate, through the school and library administration, and we get a 80% reimbursement on that, and we are still waiting for those funds, that reimbursement to come in. So once that all flushes out, we are in a very good position, and the position we expect to be in when we start it.
Alrighty, Matt, I don't see in here that we received your projections. It says that we are right to budget at this very moment. Is that what you're projecting at this time, or did we just not receive your documentation as to where the board really stands?
Right now, I'm projecting at this time to budget for majority of our items. Like I said, a lot of the items that seem to be overages at this point are because of the COVID relief funds not being set up when the money was spent. So I believe when you'll see this report next month, everything will flush out and the projections will make a lot more sense.
All right, very good. We'll look forward to seeing that. Will you please have that ready? Maybe you could have a preliminary ready for our subcommittee so that we can at least have something ahead of time. Thank you.
Not a problem at all.
Thank you. All right, then, any other questions regarding the monthly?
Yeah, so the report that Matt said we're getting next month is the report that we're supposed to be getting every month starting July 1.
He is saying that his projections are staying flat with budget is what he's saying, but the budget is now showing as if the actuals would be running on a projection side, that he's running on the high side. So he's going to provide us with a little bit more detail so that we can really see the differences. So the city could choose to continue to not adjust for the Board of Ed, but the Board of Ed is very similar to what Sprague did, but the Board of Ed, we want to see how they really are a little deeper dive.
Right, I guess what I'm saying is going back to what we discussed about whatever 10, 15 minutes ago when Frank said that he had not gotten any monthly projections from them as far as where they were at with their budget, and that is supposed to be submitted to the board every month starting at the beginning of the fiscal year, correct?
If there are differences in what the budget is, he could then be providing a very similar format. But yes, you were right.
And we haven't gotten that for 7 months.
6 months. We're a 6-month update right now.
I'm sorry, you're right, for 6 months we haven't gotten that.
Okay? Yes.
But they're supposed to provide it to us every month.
Oh my God.
To be fair, Mr. Egan, the city side, I don't adjust any of the numbers off of budget until month 4 anyway, until I at least have 3 months under my belt and we can determine where things are, flowing through.
That's been the practice.
All right. Okay,
so 2 months,
we're going to start getting these from the Board of Ed starting now.
Correct.
I told you, Frank.
And we have received them. We have received variances in the past, and this is difficult times too. Knowing with the COVID, if you're just saying that your numbers are elevated because they're including expenditures that are COVID, he's got some work to do to make some changes there.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that we should be getting these at least after the first quarter, and we haven't. So since he's on the phone,
Correct.
right, listening to this, so Matt, I'll just address you directly, is that the expectation is that we will be getting, we get a monthly report as far as your projections of your year-end budget. Clearly, I know with things going on that there's a lot more variances to that because of some relief funds that will come the city's way, but that expectation hasn't been met, so I would expect that it will be.
Right, absolutely, and basically what I'm saying is if you take a specific line item in the report that I've sent out, like the sites and repairs of improvement, the budget is $627,800. To December shows we spent about $1.25 million. What I'm saying is that I still expect for that line item to be within budget. That's why there hasn't been an adjustment. It is elevated because we did tons of HVAC work through our COVID relief fund that I was unable to move out of our operating budget because that specific fund wasn't created yet. So once that those projects and those monies that are moved out of the operating budget, the projections that are there will be correct.
I got it, yeah, okay, thank you.
And again, part of those problems really fall back to the fact that the city has not been able to fully provide all of the resources that they need to fill these positions. There has been delays in filling positions. I apologize. Police are going by. That there's been delays in hiring these positions, and that is a hindrance for this city. It continues to cripple them, if you ask me. So I'm continuing to push hard to make sure that they get the resources they need to address these fiscal infrastructure issues so that they can become sustainable. With Frank having a finance person down right now during budget time is an enormous strain. For him to not be able to fill a purchasing position for over 6 months is a strain. For the payroll position and the HR position to not be able to be filled for a period of time under a restructure of putting in a new payroll system is a strain. And so in order for them to move forward, you need the people in the chair to do the work, and you can't keep relying on the little bit of resources that you have. So I feel for them. I want them to know that, and the only way that they can continue to march on and fulfill all of these needs is to have those resources.
Right, okay. Frank,
Yeah.
how long are you out with this person in finance? How much longer?
Hold on a second.
What he said?
I don't think it's appropriate to talk about that. That individual is out on a medical leave, so we should probably not talk about that position. Frank can talk about how he's responded to it, but I don't think we need to talk about that particular position, please.
Well, I'm not quite sure this runs afoul of any HIPAA issues. Estimating how long he's gonna have a vacancy in his office.
Well, that goes, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kim.
You should have under doctor's order that you know that the person has been granted 6 months to be out, and that shouldn't be in violation, right, Lee?
Well, but I'm not prepared to talk about how long somebody's going to be out. I think the reverse is fine. We can talk about what we've done in the absence and what changes we've made, and Frank can discuss it. We have adjusted for it.
So
Or I'll do it. I don't care what else.
So we have started to move some of the responsibilities to other individuals. We have a temporary person from a temp firm, like account temps type of firm, to come in and to help us out and pick up some of the slack on some of the grants accounting. But it's not easy to just move the budget process to somebody who's never done it before. Fortunately, I drove the budget process in my prior life, so it's easier for me to pick it up.
But Frank's selling himself short. So what we've done is, we elevated a person into the vacant position, so that person is going to take over the vacant position and all the duties of that vacant person. We've then elevated a second person into the person who just created a vacancy because they went into the vacant position. All right, now we're going to take another employee and fill the next position, and then I think we're going to be looking to do, we're going to be looking to embrace the philosophy that Ms. Kennison has said when we do our budget process, to make sure that Frank has all the human resource tools that he needs. So we're not standing still. Getting the audit done on time probably froze some duties, but we're pretty much, I wouldn't say we're at full strength, but we're at probably 89%. So things are moving forward better than they were 8 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Kiernan. Okay, any other questions about the monthly? All right, Mayor, would you like to talk about just before I give a brief overview of the audit and your successes to the MARB?
Thank you, Kim. Yes, we're very pleased that the audit was done on time. First time in over a decade, definitely even longer than that. I just don't have the last year that we had an audit on time. And we had favorable operations at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year. So we are very pleased. We all worked together and we worked very hard because originally they wanted to put it on extension in November and said, well, we still probably could make it, but I wanted to just push ahead and only sign an extension in the event that we absolutely needed an extension. So I am very, very pleased. I'm very pleased. Frank did an excellent job. Finance, we all, as I said, worked together to get this done on time. And we want to continue to have our audits on time. Thank you.
Next year and the year after.
Thank you, Mayor, and I just want to remind everybody that they changed auditors this year, so this was definitely a Herculean effort to be able to get this done. They were issued an unmodified opinion on their regular financials, their state and their federal financial reports. There are some audit findings that were disclosed. I think that we will take that up at subcommittee when Frank can compile all of those findings and provide us with an update. There is one area of attention that is needed, but I want to take that up at the subcommittee as we start to move forward. The next item is I just was looking for an update if you have anything from either the school or the city side on the pandemic that you want to bring to the MARB's attention or anything else.
Well, from the city side, we are going about running a vaccination clinic, so we're trying to get as many people in the right groups, of course, vaccinated. There'll be another one this weekend. There have been vaccination clinics for the last 2 weeks, and we continue to put up and give out a lot of information, not only to our employees, but also our residents as well as what is going on with COVID and how still to protect yourself. And just because you get a vaccine doesn't mean that you can walk around without a mask and go back to normal yet. So we are definitely bringing forward that. So as far as the COVID side, I don't know with Board of Ed, but that's on the city side.
And then,
Thank you, Mayor. Matt, do you have an update on the Board of Ed?
Sure, so, in terms of schools, we are doing in-person.
I don't think the superintendent is on the line, correct?
Say that again? I'm sorry.
I don't think the superintendent is on the line today.
No, he's not.
Okay, thank you.
From the school standpoint, students are coming to school in-person learning, every day. We're having, half days and, lunch is served at the end of the day along with breakfast for the next day to limit the transition times within the schools. We haven't seen very many positive cases or anything to shut the schools down. So things are very, very positive within our schools.
Very good. Thank you.
Kim, just real quick, because we never get much good news on these reports. Lee Tiernan. So just quickly, two things that I will probably report on more at next month's meeting. Because of the vaccine, we had delayed a monetization of parking, a greater monetization of parking in the city because of COVID. But now that we have a vaccine, we decided that we wanted to be ready to go when we get out of this tunnel. So we should have a plan in place that is active no later than mid-May, so that we're capturing even some of the beach parking at that point, and then more monetization up near the university and the Veterans Hospital and around the train station by the fall. And I should have a better idea as to what that means and better numbers in the next month or so. Also, what I plan to do is put together a summary of how our new investment enterprise zone is going. So, again, all good news. And so I'll be able to give you some information of where that is, what we've done to try to increase development in the city. That's it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, thank you, City of West Haven. Appreciate your update. Be safe, and nice speaking with you.
Thank you.
Talk to you
Thank
in
you.
the subcommittee.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Shut the meeting down. Wait, so I'm telling you, they're watching in here, shut the meeting down.